Okay, so this video is going to go through the steps of summarizing. There's a document that you can find that will contain this article that we're going to cover, and there's also a document that you can find that will go through that will list the 6 steps that we're going to cover in this video. There's also a link to this PowerPoint in case you want to go through it on your own. So let's first talk about the first 2 steps. The first step is to just read the title. A lot of times people overlook reading the title and then just jump right into the article. But it's actually, especially when you're summarizing, super helpful to read the title, because a lot of times the title will actually give us information as to either what the topic is of the article or sometimes even what the main idea is of the article. So take the time to read the title. The next thing you want to do is you want to go through and read each of the first sentences of each paragraph. Rather than reading all of the sentences in the article, by just reading the first sentences, we can get from the beginning to the end of the article pretty quickly, and then it's easier for us to remember what we started reading than when we start from the beginning and read every single sentence, because a lot of times we can forget. While we are reading the title and the first sentences, we want to focus on looking for the topic. And remember, the topic again is who or what the paragraph is about. So the way that we can do this is by looking for words that are repeated, because good writers repeat the topic throughout their writing. So these are the topics, the title and the first sentences of this article. As we read through this one, we're going to see repetition of words. So here's the title, Global English. In the first sentence of the article, English isn't mentioned, but we'll notice that in the next paragraph, English is mentioned. Also, language is mentioned a couple of times. We notice in the next one, we see English and language mentioned again. And then in the last paragraph, we see English, and we see the most common is also mentioned, and the word language as well. So just from reading this title and these 4 sentences, we have a good idea as to what the topic is. And we would say the topic is the English language. We see English repeated 4 times here, and language also repeated 4 times. We might include most common, but this is only repeated 2 times, so we'd stick with the ones that are repeated more. So this one's the English language. Once we have this sense, once we've read the title and the first sentences, we should ask ourselves, well, what do I think the author is saying about the English language? What's the point that the author is trying to make about the English language? So as I go through into the next step and I read the whole article, I should have this idea in mind as to what I think the author is saying about the English language. So this, we go on to step 3. And in step 3, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and read through the article as a whole. As we're reading through, we're going to do some things. We have a couple of things that we can do. One thing, if you want, is you can go ahead and continue to be underlining or highlighting repeated words. For some people, that's helpful because, again, it drives home what the topic is. This is the first paragraph, and we'll see that the word people is coming up 3 times in this one, 4 times, and we have English again a couple times, and we have the word language. This is our first time, but we also have the word communicate and communication. So we're getting maybe a clearer picture of it. The other thing that we want to do in step 3 is we want to cross out some things. So we want to cross out numbers, percentages, names of people, names of businesses, those sort of things we want to cross out. Also, if we have things in quotation marks, after we've read it, we can cross it out, because in general, the authors don't put the main ideas or the major supporting details in quotation marks, so we can ignore them when we're trying to figure out the main idea and the major support. Also, things that are put in parentheses we can cross out, because again, that's just additional information. We can cross out examples that are given, because in general, that is not information that we need to include in our summary, because we just want to point out the most important things. The other thing that we can do as we go through this is we can highlight what we think is the main idea of the article, and what do we think are the major supporting details that that are important to understanding the article as a whole. So in this case, the main idea that I think, the main idea of this article is going to actually be this last sentence. And we can see here that this one has all of these words: English, language, and communicate. Just to compare it with the first sentence, we'll notice this one does have communication, but it doesn't have English or language, which we saw from before was the topic. So again, here's our first paragraph. If we go through our second paragraph, again, as we are reading it, we can continue to do our highlighting, but we can also do our crossing out, right? We're crossing out this thing that's in parentheses and these numbers, we're crossing them out. Notice we're not crossing out names of languages. We don't have to cross out names of countries, right? But if we had a name of a business, we would cross that out. Again, we can continue to highlight, and we can see that this is talking about people, speakers, English, native languages. We can see that there's more and more. We're more and more confident that this is about the English language and potentially about the people who speak the English language. So the other thing we want to highlight here is we want to highlight the supporting details that we want to include in it. So in this one, we're going to include this sentence here. And then also we can include our minor supporting details as well that we want to include. Remember, the supporting details are the ones that are necessary to explain, the major supporting details are the ones that are necessary to explain the main idea. And the minor supporting details are ones that are necessary to explain the supporting details. In general, we should have very few minor supporting details, because we only want them if they're necessary to explain the supporting details. So let me explain why I have this sentence here. So the supporting detail, the major supporting detail is, although English is used around the world, it's not the most common native language, right? So the thing about this sentence here is you're saying it's not the most common native language. So we want to know, well, what is the most common native language? So in this one, it says after Chinese, right? Chinese is the most common. There's Hindu and Urdu, and then there's English. Right? So this explains, okay, it's not the most common, it's actually number 4, right? We have 1, 2, 3, and then we have English after that. So again, while we're reading through this one, we can keep on highlighting, we can keep on crossing out. This is a mistake. India shouldn't be crossed out because it's the name of the country, but European Central Bank should be crossed out because it's the name of a specific business, and we're not going to use that one in here. We'll see here we have an example. We're not going to include examples, so we're going to get rid of those ones. So the supporting detail here is English is spoken as a second language. The question we might have is, well, what is it used for? And so the minor supporting detail we can include is this idea that it's used in business and in government. And then here's the last paragraph here. You'll notice again, you notice that there's a lot of things that are highlighted here, and this is why I say you might want to just limit it to the first sentence. Otherwise, you're going to have so many things highlighted that it may get a little bit confusing to you. But if it's helpful for you, then go ahead and do it. We want to cross out percentages. We want to cross out years. Here again is percentages, so that focuses us in. So the supporting detail here is this first one, right? It says English is the most common language used on the internet, but this is changing. Well, the question is, what do you mean? How is it changing? So the minor supporting detail is that non-native English speakers are the fastest growing group of new internet users. So this minor supporting detail explains how it's changing. So I'm going to include that there. So those are steps 3 and 4. So then the next thing, number 5, is we want to make an outline. We want to put all of this together in an outline. So the main idea is going to come up at the top, and the thing that that you should do is just copy word for word exactly from the article, and this is going to become useful for us in the next step. So then after the main idea, we have our major supporting detail and then our minor supporting details that that we're including. Again, major support, minor support that's necessary, major support, minor support that's necessary. Now, the tricky thing about writing a summary and making an outline of the summary is that it's not always going to be the same. So in this one, there happens to be 3 major support, and each one has a minor support explaining it. But there's going to be some times where you have a major support and you don't need minor support, but for the next one, you have a major support and you do need it. So it's going to change depending on the article. So this is one of those things that you just have to kind of get used to and practice and figure out as you go. And then the last step here is writing the actual summary. You can take a look at this summary, and there's also a separate video that actually breaks down the parts of the summary. So we'll notice here we're using version 1, where we start off with in the article and then the name of the article, in quotation marks, the name of the author, and then reporting verb, and then the main idea. You'll notice that all of this one is written using my own words rather than the author's words. I have to change things to put them into my own words, or we all do. So those are the basic steps of this. This looks, this may seem very simple going through this, but you'll find that writing a summary can be very challenging and requires a lot of thinking and effort. The first couple of times you do it, it's probably going to be pretty hard, but hopefully by the end of the semester, it's easy for you to write a summary. All right, take care. We'll see you in class.